a cloistered nun, in a silent Spanish convent, claimed the Virgin Mary appeared to her and dictated word for word the secrets of creation, the fall of Lucifer, the meaning of suffering, and what happens after we die, not as metaphor, not as poetry, but as divine history meant to prepare the world for its final transformation. This book was banned, buried, and almost erased from history, because if what it says is true, then everything changes. Its name is the mystical city of God, and this is what it reveals. We begin not with fire and brimstone, but with silence, a kind of sacred silence, a silence that does not merely surround, but enters into the soul. De Ágreda reveals something that few dared to speak aloud. She was granted visions, not of dreams, not of symbols, but of real places, of what lies beyond the veil of death. And what she describes is no fantasy. It begins, she says, with two special visions vouchsafed to her by the Lord. These were not fleeting images or abstract illuminations. No, they were total. They swallowed her world. She says that in these visions, her soul was torn from the grip of earthly things, the distractions, the noise, the desires, even the love of life itself. It all fell away. What replaced it was something she could not describe without trembling. In that instant, Ágreda's spirit was lifted, raised, she says, above the world, no longer bound by time, nor by the weight of her physical body. She was shown the realm of eternity, a place untouched by death, a kingdom not metaphorical, but real, vivid, alive with divine presence. It wasn't paradise in the way we often think. There were no golden gates or cartoon clouds. Instead, it was an experience of being seen, known, loved by, a presence too vast to contain, and too intimate to resist. But what struck her most was not just the beauty, it was the contrast. She saw, with painful clarity, the darkness of life when lived without God, the grief that follows a soul into death when it has spent a lifetime denying the divine. And she saw what comes next, not as a punishment, but as a sorrow, a kind of echoing loneliness, the kind that no longer has time to change its path. This was not fear-based doctrine. Ágreda did not preach fire. She spoke of mourning, the kind that occurs when the soul recognizes too late what it had missed. And yet, not all was sorrow, for in her visions, she also witnessed what happens when a soul dies in grace. She describes it not as death, but as a return to the origin of the soul's deepest longing, where time does not pass and nothing is ever lost, where the soul at last remembers that it was made for light. But it was not just the afterlife that her vision revealed. It was the weight of earthly life, and how it lingers even after death. She saw how attachments to comfort, to praise, not vanish when the body dies. They follow, and unless they are surrendered in life, they must be burned away in purgation. Purgatory, to her, was not some divine torture, it was cleansing. Fire not of wrath, but of mercy. And perhaps this is what makes her vision so haunting. She insists we are shaping our eternity, not in some final moment, but in every moment right now. She writes that she was permitted to see this so that she would no longer live for the world. She says the Lord withdrew her spirit from earthly things so completely that even her desire to speak, to be seen, to be remembered was reduced to dust. It's not that the world became evil in her eyes, but small, transient, like a passing shadow compared to the enduring flame she had tasted. And from that moment, de Ágreda began to write. but not with her own words. She tells us plainly that what she writes came not from her imagination, nor from books, nor from any second-hand source. She says the Virgin Mary herself, the Mother of God, appeared to her and revealed a divine narrative of history. She called it the mystical city of God, a phrase that refers to Mary as the living to praise of the divine, and yet also hints at the mystical realm where the souls of the blessed go. She was shown, she says, the great mysteries of creation, the fall of the angels, the trials of the Virgin, and the hidden pattern behind suffering and death, not as myth, but as events, spiritual events that continue even now in the unseen world. What made these visions so disruptive, dangerous even, was that they pulled no punches. They painted the soul's journey after death in rich, unforgettable detail. She writes of how the soul, after death, is drawn irresistibly presence of truth, and in that presence, every mask falls, every secret becomes known. There is no courtroom, no witnesses, only truth, and the soul's response to it. Some souls rejoice. They run, like children, into the light. Others shrink back, not because they are banished, but because they cannot yet bear the purity of the light, and so they go to be healed. That place is Purgatory, where the fire is God's love, and the pain is the soul's slow release of what no longer belongs. De Ágreda saw that nothing is wasted. Not a tear, not a prayer, not even the smallest gesture, humility, all of it echoes into eternity, shaping the soul's readiness to receive the light after death. She speaks with quiet awe about the souls of the saint show. They radiate with glory, yet with gentleness. They do not boast. They serve, and they wait for us, because in her vision, the dead are not far. They are nearer than we think. They are praying for us, watching us, urging us not to delay, urging us to live now as we wish we had lived then. She says the Lord showed her all these things, not so that she might feel important, but so that she would understand just how thin the veil truly is. Death is not the end. It is not even the beginning. It is simply the moment when the soul steps into what it always was. And so, in her quiet cell, this cloistered nun wrote a book that stunned kings, terrified bishops, and was ultimately censored, hidden, and nearly lost. But here, it is still breathing. The mystical city of God is not a fantasy. It is a mirror. It shows us who we are, where we're going, and who is waiting for us on the other side. Not to judge, but to welcome. So now, what if what she saw is true? What if this forgotten nun, tucked away in silence, was given a glimpse of what comes next, not to frighten us, but to remind us that the soul does not end, that even now, behind the veil of the visible, eternity is watching, waiting, and calling us home. Now, through de Ágreda's words, we are invited to see beyond the veil of earthly existence into the eternal kingdom. The reality she describes is not abstract or symbolic. It is a living, breathing truth. In this vision, de Ágreda is shown the life of Mary in its fullest form, and through that understanding, she is led to see not only the mysteries of the Virgin's life, but the deeper mysteries of the soul's journey, before and after death. De Ágreda describes being placed in a state by the Lord where time itself seemed to stand still, her senses overwhelmed by divine light. She was given the grace to experience the realities of heaven, not as an observer, but as one drawn intimately into the divine presence. And it was through Mary that this revelation began. In her vision, Mary is not simply a passive figure. She is a mother, a queen, and a sovereign, spirit who carries the fullness of divine wisdom. Through Mary's life, the mysteries of heaven unfold. In Mary, the soul can see what it was meant to become. For de Ágreda, understanding is clear. To know Mary is to know the eternal truths that bind heaven and earth. To understand Mary is to understand the soul's purpose in the great cosmic design. The first insight revealed to de Ágreda is the concept of divine union. She writes that Mary's soul is so closely aligned with the will of God that it mirrors the purest form of human potential. Her life, in this vision, is a model for what every soul is meant to achieve, a union with God that transcends the earthly existence. This is not a theoretical concept for de Ágreda. It is a living, breathing reality. In the vision, she sees Mary in her fullness, her strength, her grace, and her love for God. But she also sees the deep communion Mary has with the divine, a communion that shows the way for all souls. As de Ágreda is shown these truths, she begins to see the eternal nature of the soul itself. In the realm beyond death, she writes, the soul does not simply cease to exist. It is not extinguished. It is not left to wander in emptiness. Instead, the soul enters into a deeper, more profound reality, a reality in which it is fully known, not only by God, but by itself. In that moment of divine illumination, every soul is shown its purpose, its unique path. It is a moment of great revelation, one that holds both beauty and sorrow. What de Ágreda sees, and what she tries to convey, is the ultimate truth of the soul's journey, that death is not a termination, but a transformation. The soul moves from one state to another, from the mortal to the eternal. But in this movement, it is not passive. It is an active participant in its own journey. The soul, having been purified, is able to see itself fully as it was meant to be. And in this vision, de Ágreda sees that even those who have failed to live in alignment with divine will be shown this truth. There is no escaping the clarity of this divine revelation. The soul will be fully known, even in its imperfections. Yet, the story does not end in judgment alone. While de Ágreda is shown the purity of heaven and the clarity of the soul's journey after death, she also sees that there is a place of purification, a place where the soul can be cleansed, not by fire, but by light. This is not the fire of wrath, but the fire of love. It is a purifying light that removes the impurities that may have clung to the soul during its earthly life. The light is not harsh, it is not painful, it is healing. It is a grace that enables the soul to become what it was always meant to be. What de Ágreda describes is not a dark and terrifying afterlife, but one filled with grace and mercy. Yes, there is a divine justice. There is a reckoning, but it is not a cold reckoning. It is one infused with divine love, a love that sees the soul not for its failures, but for its potential, a love that does not cast away, but purifies. And then de Ágreda speaks of the communion of saints, the souls who have been made perfect, who now live in eternal union with God. These souls are not distant. They are not passive spectators. They are active participants in the life of heaven, in the great work of salvation. They intercede for the living, she writes, offering prayers and support to those still journeying through the world. In heaven, the soul is not alone. There is a vast community, a family of souls who continue to work, to pray, and to love. The saints, in de Ágreda's vision, are not abstract figures. They are real. They have names. They have faces. They are not only people who have reached the end of their journey, they are now fully involved in the ongoing work of creation, offering their intercession and love for those still on the earthly path. Death, in this sense, does not sever the bond, it deepens it. The communion between the living and the dead remains intact. It is a mutual relationship that spans both sides of the veil. The most profound aspect of de Ágreda's vision, however, is her description of the soul's final union with God. She sees that after death, the soul is drawn into a union so intimate, so perfect, that it surpasses anything the mortal world can offer. This union is not a merging with the divine, but a participation in the divine life. The soul does not lose its individuality. It is not absorbed into God in a way that erases its identity. Instead, it is brought into a perfect relationship with God, one that reveals the soul's full potential. In this union, the soul is finally at peace. It has become what it was always meant to be, and it is in this union that the soul finds its eternal home. De Ágreda describes it as a state of perfect happiness, a happiness not fleeting but everlasting. In heaven, there is no more suffering. There is no more sorrow. There is only joy, peace, and a deep, abiding love. This is the reality that awaits the faithful. This is the promise that death is not an end, but a beginning. And so, de Ágreda leaves us with a profound thought. Death is not to be feared. It is not the end of existence, but a transformation into something greater. The soul, she writes, is destined for a love that surpasses anything it has known on earth. It is this love that draws the soul beyond death into the eternal presence of God. As you reflect on these words, ask yourself, what is your soul preparing for? What is it being called to become? And, most importantly, how will you answer? De Ágreda's mystical experience takes a deeper turn, inviting us to reflect on the very nature of divine knowledge. It is not simply the knowledge of the soul's journey, but the profound awareness of the divinity itself, the Godhead, the eternal source of all creation. What is revealed here is not a distant or abstract concept of God, but a transformative encounter with the divine that transcends human understanding. Here, de Ágreda is granted a vision that does not merely display the beauty of divine truths, but invites her soul to understand the very essence of God. How God, in his infinite wisdom, operates within the heart of all creation, and how this knowledge is imparted to the human soul, altering it for eternity. The scene opens with de Ágreda experiencing a deep and holy encounter with the Lord. This is not a fleeting vision or a momentary glimpse into the spiritual realm. Rather, it is a profound immersion in the very knowledge of God which floods her soul and lifts her understanding beyond the earthly plane. What she is about to witness is not just a revelation, it is a deep transformation of the soul's very nature. As de Ágreda is caught in this moment of divine illumination, she is granted an extraordinary insight into the structure of divine knowledge. She comes to understand that this knowledge, while seemingly infinite, is imparted to the soul in a way that is both intimate, comprehensible, yet completely transcendent. This knowledge is not merely an intellectual experience. It is a spiritual awakening that brings about a profound unity with the Creator. De Ágreda sees in vivid clarity that all things, be it the heavens, the earth, or the soul itself, are in constant relation to the divine. The key to understanding this is the realization that God is not distant, nor is he confined to any one place or being. God exists as the central, unifying force of the universe, and everything in creation is drawn to him. But this knowledge is not merely theoretical, it is an intimate participation in the very life of God. De Ágreda comes to understand that God is in all things, and that all things are made for him. This insight transforms her perception of the world. It is no longer a random or chaotic place, but a deliberate and purposeful creation, orchestrated by a loving and omnipotent God. As De Ágreda reflects on this divine knowledge, she is shown how the soul, when it is purified and prepared, is capable of receiving this knowledge directly from God. It is not a passive experience, but an active participation in the divine. The soul, when it is in a state of grace, becomes a vessel through which divine wisdom flows. This knowledge is not limited to abstract truths, but is alive and dynamic, transforming the very nature of the soul that receives it. In this moment of revelation, De Ágreda is shown the vastness of the divine, yet she also feels deep sense of awe and humility. The sheer magnitude of God's existence cannot be comprehended fully by the human mind, and yet, in God's mercy, the soul is granted the capacity to understand him. This knowledge is not like any earthly learning. It is not based on books, studies, or philosophies. It is a direct encounter with the very mind of God, an immersion in his thoughts and his will. In this experience, De Ágreda realizes that this knowledge is what the soul was made for. It is its ultimate end and purpose to know and love God in his entirety. But with this profound knowledge, De Ágreda also comes to realize the weight of responsibility that comes with it. This divine knowledge does not come without an awareness of the soul's dependence on God. The soul, upon receiving this enlightenment, is given the grace to understand its place in the world, not as an independent being, but as a part of a greater whole. This realization does not bring despair, but a deep sense of peace. The soul understands that it is not isolated, but is deeply connected to the divine, and it is through this connection that it finds its true purpose. As De Ágreda's vision continues, she is shown the eternal nature of God's presence. She witnesses the divine power that sustains all of creation, knowing that this power is ever present, constantly working to uphold the universe. She understands that God's will is not arbitrary, but is an eternal truth that governs all things. Everything in existence is a reflection of this will, and in this divine order, there is no chaos, no confusion, only harmony and purpose. Through this illumination, De Ágreda also sees the role of the soul in the divine order. The soul, upon leaving the earthly body, is not lost in some infinite void. Rather, it is drawn into the presence of God, where it will continue to grow and evolve. This growth is not static, but a continual deepening of the soul's understanding and relationship with God. The soul's journey does not end with death, but begins a new chapter own, where it is forever drawn closer to the divine, always in a state of spiritual growth. In De Ágreda's experience, there is no finality, there is no end to the soul's journey. Instead, there is an eternal unfolding. The soul, when united with God, continues to move towards ever deeper union with the divine. This is the nature of the afterlife, that De Ágreda is shown a constant, eternal growth towards greater understanding and love. The soul's ultimate destination is not a final, fixed point, but a continuous progression of divine communion. De Ágreda also receives a profound understanding of the divine gifts granted to the soul upon death. These gifts are not merely rewards, but are transformative graces that allow the soul to exist more fully in the presence of God. The soul, upon leaving the body, enters into a state where it is free from the limitations of time, space, and earthly concerns. In this state, the soul is fully immersed in the divine wisdom and love that sustain all of creation. The soul is no longer burdened by the imperfections of the physical world, but is fully alive in the eternal presence of God. This is the hope that de Ágreda's revelation offers, that death is not the end, but a glorious continuation of the soul's journey. Death is not something to fear, but a transition into a more profound, more perfect state of being. In this vision, de Ágreda is shown that the afterlife is not a realm of shadows or uncertainty, but one of light, truth, and divine union. Finally, in this divine vision, de Ágreda comes to see that the knowledge of God that has been granted to her is not for herself alone. It is meant to be shared with others, to offer hope, guidance to all who seek the truth. This knowledge, she writes, is meant to uplift the soul, to help it understand its purpose and its destiny. And it is through this knowledge that the soul finds its true peace in knowing that it is not alone, but eternally united with the love, wisdom of the divine. But there are classifications of God's divine decrees, each of which is connected to specific instants in time. These moments, according to the book, are not arbitrary. Each one is part of a meticulously designed plan that unfolds as part of God's larger, eternal purpose. De Ágreda explains how God, through these divine decrees, communicates to his creation, guiding humanity toward its highest good. De Ágreda illustrates the precision with which the divine decrees are executed. These decrees do not happen haphazardly or without purpose. Each decree is uniquely suited to an exact instant in time, providing direction, meaning, and growth for the soul. Every divine moment has a role, a purpose, and a connection to God's eternal wisdom. The intricate design behind these moments reveals not just an underlying order to the universe, but also a deep communication between God and his creation. Through these decrees, God actively shapes the path of every soul. As de Ágreda describes, the divine decrees are classified based on the instants in which they are realized. These decrees encompass the unfolding of the divine plan, each moment acting as a gateway to greater understanding, growth, and communion with God. One of the fascinating aspects of this classification is that some of these divine moments are eternal, holding a timeless significance. Others, however, are temporary, coming into being for a specific purpose at a certain moment in time. Each of these instants, whether permanent or fleeting, represents a divine will that is moving through time, unfolding the intricate design of God's plan. De Ágreda's visions make it clear that these divine moments are not something separate from the human experience. On the contrary, they are woven directly into the fabric of the soul's journey. Each soul's path is unique, but within the greater picture, it follows the pattern laid out by God's divine decrees. Every single moment in the soul's existence, whether joyful or painful, is an expression of divine purpose. The soul, as de Ágreda describes, is never left without guidance. Even when the path ahead is unclear or difficult, the divine decrees are there, constantly shaping and moving the soul toward its ultimate fulfillment. The book highlights the importance of recognizing these divine moments. When we view time through the lens of the divine decrees, we see that no event is random. Each moment is random, imbued with divine intention and this understanding offers profound comfort and clarity. Each instant we experience is a piece of the greater puzzle that makes up our lives. Even the moments that seem trivial or difficult are an essential part of the larger divine design. The beauty of this revelation is that it invites us to recognize God's presence and purpose in every moment. A significant point that Ágreda makes is the idea that these divine decrees are not just abstract concepts or distant ideas. They are active, living forces that interact with the soul. These decrees do not simply describe how things should be, they actively shape reality and guide souls. They are not merely laws governing the cosmos, they are intimate communications from God that flow directly into the soul's experience. The soul that is attuned to these decrees is able to perceive the deep meaning in every moment, realizing that each instant carries divine significance. De Ágreda emphasizes that God's guidance is not imposed externally, as though the soul is forced to comply. Rather, the divine decrees are invitations to participate in the divine plan. Soul, in its freedom, can choose to align with God's will or resist it. The decrees provide the opportunity for the soul to grow, evolve, and eventually unite with the divine. But this process requires cooperation from the soul. The soul's awareness of the divine decrees and its response to them determine the progress it makes along the spiritual journey. De Ágreda also explains the unfolding of the divine decrees over time. It's clear that these decrees do not manifest all at once. Instead, they are revealed gradually as the soul grows and becomes more attuned to God's presence. This gradual revelation reflects the soul's increasing capacity to understand the divine mysteries. God does not overwhelm the soul with too much information at once. Rather, he unveils his wisdom in stages, each revelation building upon the last, until the soul is prepared to fully comprehend the ultimate truth. What is also fascinating is de Ágreda's discussion of the relationship between time and eternity. God's divine decrees, while categorized according to specific moments, are part of a larger, eternal plan. Time, in this sense, is not a barrier to God's will. Instead, it is the means by which God's eternal plan unfolds in the world. The soul, too, is shaped through time. Each moment it experiences is an opportunity for growth, but all of these moments are pointing toward the ultimate eternity that awaits the soul. The concept of time becomes a bridge between the temporal and the eternal, a space in which God's will is revealed and carried out. One of the most profound aspects is the understanding that the divine decrees are not only for the benefit of the soul, they are also a means of God communicating with the larger creation. The world around us, in all its beauty and complexity, is also an expression of God's will. Each tree, each mountain, each star in the sky exists as part of God's grand design. The divine decrees are not isolated to the human experience, they shape all of creation, from the smallest details to the grandest movements of the cosmos. For de Ágreda, these revelations were not merely intellectual understandings. They were profound, mystical experiences that allowed her to witness the divine's active presence world. She did not just study the decrees, she lived them. The way she describes these visions emphasizes the deep spiritual connection between the soul and God's will through her experiences. De Ágreda was able to see how the divine decrees were not just abstract laws of nature, but living, breathing manifestations of divine love and wisdom. We are invited to reflect on our own understanding of time and how we experience God's presence in our lives. When we see time through the lens of the divine decrees, it changes our perspective. Every moment, whether mundane or extraordinary, is imbued with divine significance. Each instant is part of the sacred unfolding of the divine plan. There is no such thing as a wasted moment. Each one is an opportunity for growth, for alignment with God's will, and for the realization of our ultimate purpose. As de Ágreda's visions reveal, we are not alone in our journey. The divine decrees are actively guiding us, shaping us, and revealing God's love through each moment. We are invited then to recognize the presence of the divine in every experience and to align ourselves more fully with God's eternal plan. Time is not something to be feared or to be wasted. It is a precious gift given to us by God through which we can learn, grow, and eventually unite with the divine. Every moment is a step toward that ultimate union, and every instant is imbued with God's guidance and wisdom. Through these divine decrees, we are invited to participate in the sacred eternal plan that governs all of creation. But now, de Ágreda provides an intricate exploration of divine wisdom as revealed in the T's scriptures, particularly through the lens of Proverbs chapter 8. It is designed to guide readers not only through the deeper understanding of God's wisdom as described in the Bible, but also through the specific way in which this wisdom is connected to the soul's journey, both in life, in the afterlife. De Ágreda takes us through a careful reflection on how the Holy Scriptures act as a direct communication between God and His creation. The Scriptures, she reveals, are not mere words on a page, but vessels through which divine wisdom and understanding flow. Within these sacred texts, she emphasizes that the soul can find not only guidance for its earthly life, but also the necessary enlightenment for the eternal life that follows. Proverbs 8 serves as the foundation for the insights de Ágreda unveils. In this passage, wisdom is personified as a divine force, speaking to humanity and offering the insight of the eternal realm. De Ágreda highlights that this wisdom is no fleeting human knowledge. It is rather a reflection of the very mind of God, placed in the world to guide souls in their journey toward divine union. The author's mystical visions allow her to see the depths of this wisdom and its eternal implications. As she explains, wisdom was present at the creation of the world, standing by God's side as He crafted the universe. This understanding extends to the nature of life after death. Wisdom is not confined to the world of the living. De Ágreda reveals that, in the afterlife, wisdom continues to guide the soul, illuminating its path toward ultimate union with God. For her, wisdom is the very foundation of understanding life beyond death. But what is it about the divine wisdom in Proverbs 8 that holds such power according to de Ágreda? It is not merely an abstract idea, but a force that permeates and transcends creation. It is eternal and essential, woven into the fabric of reality itself. As she envisions it, this wisdom is so much more than an intellectual pursuit. It is a living, dynamic force that aligns the soul with God's will and directs it to its proper end, eternal union with the Creator. De Ágreda also delves into the role of divine decrees. She explains that the will of God is often enacted through what she calls divine decrees, which are set out for each soul in each instant of their existence. She draws attention to the fact that these decrees are not random or impersonal. Rather, they are a direct reflection of God's wisdom and will for each individual, helping to shape their path in both life and the afterlife. She clarifies that the divine decrees are essential for understanding both the human experience and the soul's afterlife. These decrees are not predetermined fates, but manifestations of divine will designed to guide souls toward their highest good. They function as signposts, leading the soul through life's many challenges, while also preparing it for the afterlife. Through these decrees, God imparts not only the wisdom needed for earthly living, but also the necessary understanding for navigating the mysteries of the spiritual realm. One of the key revelations is the idea that wisdom is not static, but continually evolving with the soul's journey. In life, wisdom presents itself in various forms, sometimes through suffering, sometimes through joy, and sometimes through revelation. In the afterlife, this wisdom continues to unfold, illuminating the soul's path as it moves toward its final destination. This aligns with the Christian understanding of the afterlife as a process of spiritual purification, where the soul comes to understand more fully the divine mysteries. What is also crucial is de Ágreda's understanding of how the scriptures guide the soul through these stages of spiritual evolution. As the wisdom of Proverbs calls out to humanity, it becomes clear that the scriptures are not just historical documents, but living texts that speak to the stevens, eternal truths of God's creation. For de Ágreda, they are a powerful means of communicating with the divine, offering guidance for both life and death. By studying these texts with reverence and insight, the soul is able to align itself more fully with God's divine will, which brings peace and fulfillment in both this life and the next. De Ágreda's description of divine wisdom reveals that it is not merely something to be understood through intellectual study. Wisdom, in her vision, is experienced through the soul's direct interaction with God. It is an intimate relationship that begins in life and continues beyond the grave. For those souls who enter the afterlife, the wisdom of Proverbs serves as a divine light, showing them the way through the spiritual realms and leading them to their final eternal reward. Wisdom is not only a guide for living, it is a companion in death, helping the soul to navigate the unknown and reach its ultimate fulfillment. De Ágreda also speaks of the nature of divine enlightenment and how it is bestowed upon those who seek it with humility and love. She explains that the wisdom in the scriptures is not for the placedom, arrogant, or the self-righteous. Instead, it is for those who approach the divine with a sincere, open heart, desiring to know God's will. The wisdom described in Proverbs 8 is not a simple matter of intellect. It is a gift of grace that transforms the soul. When the soul receives this grace, it is able to discern divine truth more clearly and follow the path that leads it to God. In the afterlife, this divine wisdom becomes even more essential. De Ágreda's visions reveal that the wisdom the soul receives in life continues to guide it after death, helping it to make sense of the spiritual journey and understand its place in God's eternal plan. For de Ágreda, the afterlife is not a passive experience, but an active process of growth, refinement, and transformation. It is through divine wisdom that the soul learns to fully embrace its purpose and fulfill the will of God. De Ágreda's account also emphasizes that wisdom is not a solitary pursuit, it is meant to be shared with others. The wisdom found in the scriptures is not simply for individual enlightenment, but for the edification of the entire community. De Ágreda's mystical visions reveal that the soul, even after death, continues to participate in the divine plan of salvation, helping others to understand the truth and guide them on their spiritual journey. De Ágreda offers us a profound reflection on the power of divine wisdom as found in the scriptures. She invites us to see the Bible not just as a historical document, but as a living guide that speaks to us in both life and death. The wisdom of Proverbs 8 calls us to recognize the divine order that governs the universe and to align our lives with that order. It is through this alignment that we can find peace both in life and in the afterlife. As we reflect on these insights, we are reminded of the importance of seeking wisdom in our own lives. Just as de Ágreda experienced divine wisdom through her visions, we too can seek wisdom through the scriptures, allowing them to guide us on our journey, whether in life, death. Wisdom is the light that leads us toward God, helping us to understand our purpose and our place in the eternal plan. The more we open ourselves to this wisdom, the more we can align ourselves with God's will and experience the peace that comes from understanding the divine mysteries. De Ágreda reflects on a deep concern she holds about the teachings she's received, questioning if she is perhaps overstepping her bounds. Is she right to record such heavenly insights? Is there danger in sharing these visions with the world? As you listen to her thoughts, you'll be drawn into a reflection on your own doubts, your own search for meaning in the mysteries of life and death. She ponders a profound question that many of us, at some point, have asked ourselves: is it possible that we're misunderstanding divine truth? Can we truly trust the visions we believe to be of a heavenly source, or are we merely projecting our own desires and fears? She had been living in a state of grace, receiving visions of the Virgin Mary, Christ, and the celestial realms. These visions were not simple dreams, but profound experiences that transcended the ordinary. They seemed to reveal the very structure of existence, the divine order, the workings of heaven, and the mysteries of life after death. But despite this overwhelming experience, a lingering doubt remained. Could she, a humble nun, truly grasp the depths of such divine truths? Was her understanding of the mystical life after death accurate, or was it tainted by human limitation? This was not a trivial matter. For de Ágreda, to question the authenticity of these revelations was to question the foundation of her life's work. To step away from this path might mean turning away from the very divine purpose she had been chosen to fulfill. But to accept these truths without understanding their full implications might lead others astray. In her moment of doubt, de Ágreda is granted an answer not through earthly words, but through a vision. The Virgin Mary herself appears to her, a serene and loving presence that illuminates de Ágreda's soul. In this vision, Mary assures her that the revelations are indeed true, and that the divine plan for salvation and the afterlife is greater and more profound than even de Ágreda could comprehend in her earthly state. The Virgin Mary explains that the visions are not simply for de Ágreda's personal understanding, but are meant to be shared with the world. They are a divine message, a gift meant to uplift humanity by revealing the truths of the afterlife and the nature of existence beyond this world. Through this revelation, she is to help guide others toward a deeper understanding of life after death, what awaits beyond the veil of mortal life. Mary tells de Ágreda that while earthly knowledge is limited, divine truth, when revealed, is expansive, and it transcends human limitations. By humbling herself to receive these visions, de Ágreda is fulfilling a sacred purpose, the truth of the afterlife, of the soul's journey beyond death, is not bound by time or space. It is eternal and unchanging. In the moments that follow, de Ágreda receives further clarity on the nature of life after death. She is shown the incredible beauty and peace of the afterlife, the realm where souls, purified through divine grace, exist in perfect harmony with God. She sees the souls of the righteous, those who have lived virtuous lives, experiencing a joy that transcends any earthly happiness. This heavenly vision is not only a comfort for de Ágreda, but also a profound teaching for all of us. It invites us to consider the life after death as a continuation, not an end. In the divine realm, there is no more suffering, no more separation. The soul, having been purified, is united with its Creator, basking in eternal light and peace. But de Ágreda also witnesses the consequences of those who have chosen a life of sin and turned away from God. The afterlife for them is not one of peace, but of separation and suffering. This vision, stark and sobering, is not meant to instill fear, but to reinforce the importance of living a life aligned with divine principles. De Ágreda's doubts have been answered, and she returns to her writings with renewed clarity and determination. Her earlier uncertainty has transformed into a deep understanding of the divine mysteries. She knows now that her role is not just to receive these visions, but to share them, to help others understand the path to the afterlife and the consequences of their choices. In her work, she explores the concept of the soul's journey, emphasizing that life on earth is but a brief moment in a much larger, eternal existence. The soul, according to de Ágreda, is not bound by the physical body. Instead, it is destined for a greater purpose, one that extends beyond the temporal world we see around us. What we experience in this life is just a preparation for the life that follows, an eternal existence, where we either move toward divine fulfillment or fall into separation from God. Through her visions, de Ágreda reveals that the afterlife is not a place of mere abstraction. It is a living, breathing reality, a place where souls find either union with the divine or separation, based on the choices made during their earthly lives. She speaks of the soul's purification process, how it is either drawn closer to or further away from God, depending on its actions on earth. De Ágreda's journey through doubt and fear has led her to a deeper understanding of life after death, a vision so clear that it brings not just knowledge but peace. Her journey shows us that doubt is not something to fear. It is through the questioning, the searching, and the opening of the soul to divine insight that we can come to a fuller understanding of our place in this world and the next. In her words, we are invited to reflect on our own lives, on how we live, how we love, and how we prepare ourselves for what lies beyond. Life after death is not a distant concept, it is a reality we are all moving toward, and it is shaped by the choices we make today. The journey of de Ágreda serves as a powerful reminder that the mysteries of life and death are not meant to frighten us. They are meant to guide us, to encourage us to live with greater purpose, with love, and with the knowledge that what lies beyond this life is full of hope, grace, and the eternal presence of the divine. As you reflect on these teachings, may you find peace in knowing that you are not alone in your questions. Like de Ágreda, we all seek understanding, and it is in our openness, our willingness to explore these mysteries, that we come closer to the truth. Now, de Ágreda presents us with a striking revelation, how all things in creation, from smallest blade of grass to the heavens above, were created with purpose and intention most high, and that purpose? To serve humanity and to guide us towards the divine. But there's more to it than just that. De Ágreda's account reveals a deeper spiritual truth, one that ties the creation of the world to the roles of angels and men, all under the leadership of the incarnate Word, Christ himself. De Ágreda, in her mystical visions, shows us that everything we see around us, the very fabric of our reality was created by the Most High, who, with divine wisdom and power, brought all things into being. But this creation, according to de Ágreda, is not arbitrary. It is not some random act of nature. Rather, it is a deliberate and purposeful act designed for the benefit of humankind. Everything that exists, from the grandest galaxies to the smallest organisms, was created with a higher plan in mind. The physical world is not a mere backdrop for our lives. It is part of a divine narrative that is unfolding. Every tree, every animal, every drop of water has its place in this grand design. Ágreda's vision, the material world, is not separate from the spiritual world. They are intertwined. The beauty of creation is a reflection of the Creator's love and care for his people, humanity. But the creation of the physical world does not stand alone. According to de Ágreda, God did not simply create the earth and leave it to its own devices. No, the divine plan is far more intricate. In this plan, two great orders of beings were created, angels and men. Each has a unique role, a specific purpose, and they are bound together by their common goal to worship and serve the Most High, under the leadership of the incarnate Word, Jesus Christ. The angels, beings of pure spirit, were created first, before humanity. Their role is to assist the divine plan, to serve as messengers, protectors, and guides. They exist in a realm of perfect harmony with God, constantly singing His praises and carrying out His will, but their existence is not simply passive. In de Ágreda's visions, we see that the angels were created with a deep, profound purpose, to guide humanity and help lead us towards our ultimate salvation. And yet, even within this spiritual realm, there is a hierarchy, a structure in which angels assigned roles based on their closeness to God. Some angels, the higher choirs, have a more direct connection to the divine, while others are tasked with more specific duties here on earth. But all are united in their devotion to God's will. This heavenly order, de Ágreda reveals, is integral to the cosmic plan. Without the angels, humanity's journey toward God would be far more difficult, far more uncertain. And then, there is humanity us, the mortal beings who walk this earth burdened with the complexities of life, yet gifted with the incredible potential to know and love God. In de Ágreda's vision, humanity is seen as a key part of God's grand design. We are not mere accidents of nature. We were created with a specific purpose, to seek God, to love Him, and to fulfill the mission of being His children on earth. But we, unlike the angels, are bound to the physical world. Our bodies are frail, our time here fleeting. Yet, in our limitations lies the beauty of our existence. While the angels were created pure and spiritual, we were created with both a spiritual soul and a physical body. Our experience on earth is a blending of the spiritual and the material. We are the link between these two realms, the bridge that connects the seen and the unseen. De Ágreda explains that our lives, though temporary, are filled with divine purpose. Every moment we spend here on earth, every choice we make, is a part of the larger story of creation. Even our suffering, de Ágreda reveals, has meaning in the divine plan. For through it, we are purified and prepared for the life to come. But humanity's journey is not solitary. We are not left to navigate this world alone. Just as the angels were created to guide us, we have been given the ultimate guide, the incarnate Word, Christ Himself. De Ágreda's vision tells us that Christ is not just a figure of the past, but the figure of the past, eternal leader of all creation, He is the one who leads us from the material to the spiritual, from death to life. Christ, in de Ágreda's vision, is the center of all creation. He is the reason for the material world's existence. He is the key to understanding both the material and the spiritual realms. Through his incarnation, death, and resurrection, Christ has brought meaning to both our lives and our deaths. He has bridged the gap between the physical and the divine, offering us a path to salvation. Christ's role, de Ágreda emphasizes, is not just that of a teacher or savior. He is the leader of all creation. As the incarnate Word, he governs not only humanity, but also the angels, the stars, and the very fabric of the universe. Under his leadership, everything has purpose. The world exists because he chose it to, and humanity exists to follow him, to learn from him, and to live in harmony with the divine will. Now, we are reminded of the profound interconnectedness of all things. Creation, in all its forms, was made with love and purpose. The material world is not something to be feared or discarded, but to be embraced as part of God's divine plan. And we, as human beings, are not isolated in our journey. We are surrounded by heavenly guides, angels, and Christ himself, who are here to lead us towards the divine. In our own lives, we are often confronted with doubt, with hardship, and with the mystery of life and death. De Ágreda reminds us that everything has purpose. We are not here by chance. We are part of a divine plan that spans beyond time and space. Our lives, our struggles, our joys, all contribute to the larger narrative of creation. And in the end, we are called to return to the source of all things, God himself. As we move forward in our own journey, let us remember that we are never alone. We are part of something greater. Our lives, no matter how uncertain or challenging, are part of a divine story that is unfolding. And as we seek to understand the mysteries of life and death, may we always turn to the Creator, to the leadership of Christ, and to the guidance of the angels, knowing that they are with us every step of the way. In her visions, de Ágreda not only explores the visions granted to her, but also helps us understand the significance of the 12th chapter of the Apocalypse. The teachings she receives are not just abstract theological concepts, they are tangible, powerful glimpses into the world beyond our own, a world that holds the answers to many of our deepest questions about life, death, and everything that comes after. This is an invitation to consider the future of humanity and our place in the divine narrative, a narrative that unfolds not only on earth but in the realms of heaven. De Ágreda's reflections on the Apocalypse are a guide for anyone who has ever wondered about the afterlife, the destiny, souls, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. The deeper we go, the more we realize that the visions shared are not simply for the curious. They are meant to inspire us, to comfort us, and to help us find peace in the face of uncertainty. De Ágreda delves into the Apocalypse, which speaks of a great vision, one in which a woman, clothed with the sun, stands in battle against the dragon, representing the forces of evil. This battle is not merely symbolic. In the visions that de Ágreda received, she came to understand it as a battle that takes place, not just in the heavens, but in the hearts of every human being, every soul that lives on earth. The woman in the Apocalypse, adorned with the sun, is often interpreted as a symbol of the Virgin Mary, the mother of the incarnate Word, Jesus Christ. But de Ágreda's mystical insight goes beyond this interpretation. She sees the woman as the personification of the Church, the collective body of believers who, through their faith, are united in the mission of defeating the forces of evil led by the dragon. But what does this battle mean for us, for those who are seeking answers about life after death? De Ágreda's teachings on this matter are profound. The battle between good and evil, she reveals, is not only a celestial event, it is a daily reality. Each of us, in our lives, is engaged in a spiritual struggle. It is through our choices, our actions, and our thoughts that we participate in this eternal conflict. And while the dragon symbolizing temptation, sin, and despair may seem to hold sway at times, De Ágreda's vision gives us hope, for the woman, representing the Church and the faithful, will ultimately triumph. De Ágreda speaks of the faithful, those who follow the teachings of Christ and live in accordance with his divine will as the true victors in this cosmic battle. The faithful, she teaches, are not merely passive spectators in the war between light and darkness. Through their faith, their prayers, and their actions, they actively participate in the spiritual forces that bring about the victory of good over evil. But this victory is not immediate. It requires patience, perseverance, and steadfastness in faith. The faithful may face trials and tribulations, and it may seem, at times, that evil is gaining ground. Yet, as De Ágreda reveals through her visions, the ultimate victory is assured. This promise is reflected in the words of the Apocalypse itself, where the dragon is cast out of heaven, symbolizing the triumph of good, and the faithful are given a place of honor in the divine realm. For those of us concerned about what happens after death, De Ágreda's reflections provide great comfort. The final victory of good is not just a future event, it is a present reality. Those who remain faithful, those who align their lives with the will of God, can have confidence that they too will share in this victory. In the visions that De Ágreda shares, death is not the end, but a transition, an entry into a greater reality, a reality in which the soul is forever united with its Creator. One of the most comforting aspects is De Ágreda's depiction of the rewards that await the faithful in the afterlife. In her visions, she sees a glorious heaven where the souls of the righteous are welcomed into the presence of God. This is not a place of passive rest, but a dynamic, active communion with the divine. Here, the faithful will not merely exist, they will participate fully in the eternal life of God, united with Him in love and joy. But De Ágreda also warns us that the path to this eternal reward is not an easy one. It requires effort, dedication, and the rejection of the temptations that the world offers. The faithful must remain vigilant, for the dragon is always lurking, seeking to lead souls astray. The key to triumph, as De Ágreda teaches, is to follow the example of Christ, who overcame the world and its temptations through his love and obedience to the Father. The soul's journey does not end at death, but continues into eternity. De Ágreda's visions of the afterlife are filled with profound beauty and peace, but they also highlight the importance of living a life rooted in faith. For those who seek to understand the mysteries of life after death, De Ágreda's message is clear. The afterlife is a continuation of the soul's journey toward God, and the choices we make in this life determine the nature of that journey. We are reminded that life is more than just the material world we see around us. There is a deeper reality, a divine truth that transcends time and space. Through the visions granted to Ágreda, we are invited to see beyond our daily struggles and to focus on the greater purpose that lies ahead. Life after death, as she reveals, is not something to fear, but something to look forward to, a return to the loving arms of God, where all suffering and pain are left behind. In this world, we may face hardships, losses, and questions about what lies beyond the veil, but de Ágreda's visions offer us a message of hope and assurance. The victory over evil is assured, the faithful will be rewarded, and the afterlife is a place of eternal peace. We are not alone in our journey. We are guided by the angels, led by Christ, and supported by the prayers of the faithful who have gone before us. Now, we are taken further into the unfolding revelation of the Apocalypse, particularly the second half of its 12th chapter, through the eyes of a nun, a mystic who saw beyond this, the world. We are invited to understand the very essence of divine purpose, the eternal battle between good and evil, and the triumph of God's will over darkness. This is not merely a theological explanation, it is an invitation to look deeper into the heart of creation itself. De Ágreda's vision is grounded in the continuing revelation of the Apocalypse, where the symbols of conflict, victory, and divine authority are explored with profound insight. The complex interplay between heaven and earth, good and evil, the divine and the human, becomes a tapestry, one that reveals the mystery of life, death, and life after death. De Ágreda reflects on the remainder of the 12th chapter of the Apocalypse, bringing a clarity to the celestial battle described in earlier parts of the sacred text. The Apostle John's vision of a post, woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars upon her head, serves as the key to understanding the triumph of the divine over evil. But what is truly striking in de Ágreda's explanation is her emphasis on the intimate connection between humanity and the divine, an interconnectedness that underpins all creation. As we journey through life, it's easy to forget that everything around us is part of a greater purpose, a purpose designed by God. The Apocalypse, as explained by de Ágreda, reveals the unfolding of that purpose in vivid detail. The woman, who is often interpreted as the Blessed Virgin Mary, represents not just the Mother of God, but also the Church, the community of believers who are united under the leadership of Christ. Her victory over the dragon is not just symbolic, it is a promise that the forces of darkness will not prevail. De Ágreda's meditation brings us closer to understanding how the woman in the Apocalypse is a figure of divine protection and hope. She is the embodiment of the Church, the protector of all souls, guiding humanity through the trials and tribulations of life. This image, while heavenly and transcendent, is also deeply relatable. It speaks to the protection and guidance we, as individuals, are offered in the face of life's challenges. In the face of despair, we are not alone. The divine is with us, and so is the Church, represented in the woman of the Apocalypse. The dragon, mentioned in the Apocalypse as the embodiment of evil, is a powerful symbol. But de Ágreda reveals that the dragon is not just an ancient force, it is an ongoing challenge, a force that seeks to turn humanity away from God. This enemy is not just an abstract idea, it is a very real part of our daily lives. The dragon is the temptation to sin, the whispers of doubt, and the overwhelming pull toward earthly distractions. In the mystical visions that de Ágreda experienced, the dragon is seen as being constantly at war with the woman clothed with the sun, representing the forces of evil against the forces of good. But what's remarkable in de Ágreda's reflection is how she reveals that this battle is not one that humanity fights alone. The woman, the Church, is not simply standing passively, face of evil. She is actively engaged in the fight, using divine power to protect and defend her children. De Ágreda explains that the dragon's defeat, although depicted in apocalyptic terms, is inevitable. The final victory is already written in the divine plan. The forces of evil may rage against us, but they are powerless in the face of God's will, and it is through the protection of the Blessed Virgin, through the guidance of the Church, and through the strength that we find in our faith, that we can overcome the dragon's temptations in our own lives. Now, we are reminded that life is not simply about surviving the trials we face, but about participating in the greater narrative of salvation. Each of us has a role to play in the unfolding of God's plan. De Ágreda's vision reveals that our lives are deeply connected to the celestial realm. In the grand cosmic drama, we are not just passive observers but active participants. Through our faith, through our choices, and through our dedication to God's will, we contribute to the ultimate triumph of good over evil. But this victory is not one that will come to fruition in an instant. The battle is ongoing. In this world, we will encounter hardships, struggles, and moments of doubt. But in her visions, Ágreda reminds us that our victory is assured in the end. The victory of the woman clothed with the sun, the triumph over the dragon, is a promise that God's love and justice will ultimately prevail. De Ágreda makes us understand that the victory over evil is not simply a distant event, it is something that we experience in our own lives. Every time we choose to act with love, every time we choose to serve others, every time we resist the temptation to stray from the path, we are participating in this cosmic victory. We are not helpless in the face of darkness. We are equipped with divine power, the love of the Blessed Virgin, and the strength of our faith. The woman in the Apocalypse, as revealed by de Ágreda, is not merely a figure of the past. She is a symbol for all of us, a representation of how we, as individuals, are called to rise above the struggles of life. As members of the Church, we are united in this mission to bring light into the world, to resist the darkness, and to trust in the victory that is already promised. De Ágreda offers us not only theological insights, but a deeply personal message. We are not alone. We are part of a much larger story, one in which we have a vital role, and no matter the battles we face, no matter how insurmountable the challenges may seem, God's plan will not fail. We are protected, we are loved, and we are called to be part of the divine victory that is unfolding. Now, we are invited to understand life after death in a way that transcends the ordinary. We are confronted with a powerful and final interpretation of the symbols in the Apocalypse. The woman, clothed with the sun, as de Ágreda describes, is not just a distant figure from the past. She is the Mother of God, the Church, the protector of all souls. In this final part of the 12th chapter, the woman's victory is not only foretold, but it is proclaimed as a reality for all to understand and embrace. The celestial battle between good and evil, which has raged throughout history, finds its resolution in the victory of the woman over the dragon, the embodiment of evil. Yet, de Ágreda's vision goes beyond a mere battle. It presents an eternal truth. The forces of evil may seem strong, but they are ultimately powerless before the will of God. The dragon, though terrifying, is destined for defeat. Through the grace of the divine, through the strength of the Blessed Virgin, the Church, and all of humanity, the powers of darkness will be overcome. But this victory is not a simple or passive outcome. De Ágreda reveals that this victory is an active participation in God's plan. Each soul, each individual, plays a role in this divine drama. The final triumph over evil is not something that happens apart from us. It is something we actively contribute to through our faith, our actions, and our willingness to follow the divine will. The woman clothed with the sun represents more than just the Mother of God or the Church. She is also a representation of the soul's journey. In her victory over the dragon, we see the journey of every believer, every soul striving toward the light. In de Ágreda's mystical visions, the final victory of the woman is a reflection of what is possible for each of us. She embodies the strength we need to overcome life's temptations, to resist the pull of sin, and to remain faithful to the divine path laid before us. As the woman gives birth to a son, de Ágreda reflects on how this symbolizes the birth of new spiritual life in each believer. Just as Christ was born into the world, so too must each soul experience a spiritual rebirth, a renewal of purpose, a transformation from darkness to light. This rebirth, de Ágreda teaches, is a necessary part of the soul's journey through life and into eternity. Through her divine visions, de Ágreda highlights how this rebirth is not a distant event, but something that happens continuously throughout our lives. Every act of kindness, every decision to choose love over hatred, light over darkness, brings us closer to the divine victory. Every moment of grace, no matter how small, is a step toward the ultimate triumph over the dragon, the triumph of good over evil, of light over darkness, and of life over death. De Ágreda offers a message that resonates deeply with all who seek reassurance and comfort in the face of life's trials. In her visions, she witnesses not just the cosmic victory, but also the intimate involvement of the divine in every soul's journey. The victory over evil is not abstract or distant. It is personal. It is something that is played out in our lives, in the choices we make, and in the way we respond to the challenges we face. For de Ágreda, the defeat of the dragon is a declaration of God's infinite love and protection. Evil may rise, but it cannot prevail. It is a reminder that in the face of adversity, in the face of suffering, there is always a higher purpose. Even in moments of doubt, when the world seems overwhelming and the forces of darkness seem to hold sway, there is a deeper truth. The divine reigns supreme, and the ultimate victory has already been secured. De Ágreda's reflections provide a sense of peace and assurance for anyone who feels lost or burdened. The dragon may symbolize many things: temptation, suffering, doubt, but in the end, it is powerless against the will of God. And as long as we remain true to our faith, true to our divine calling, we share in that victory. What is particularly striking in de Ágreda's vision is her understanding that the victory over the dragon, the defeat of evil, is not just something that happens in the future, it is already in motion. The divine plan is unfolding now. The forces of light are active, working within and around us. The victory of the woman clothed with the sun, as de Ágreda explains, is not just a promise for the future. It is a reality that exists in the present. In our lives, this victory manifests through moments of grace, through acts of mercy, and through the unbreakable bond between God and His creation. We do not wait for the divine victory to come. We experience it now through our connection to the present moment. Divine, through our connection to each other. We are not alone in this cosmic battle. The divine is with us. And the church, the woman clothed with the sun, leads us through the darkness into the light. Now we are left with a message of hope and reassurance. Life after death, as de Ágreda describes it, is not a distant and unknown event. It is part of the eternal journey that begins the moment we are born. The victory over the dragon, the triumph of good over evil, is not just something that happens in a distant future. It is a present reality, a reality that unfolds every day. through our choices, our faith, and our actions. In the end, we are reminded that the divine victory is assured, and that through our connection to the divine, through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin and the guidance of the Church, we can find peace in the face of life's challenges. The victory is ours, not because of our strength, but because of the strength of the divine that guides us. Finally, we are brought face to face with one of the most profound mysteries of all, the creation of all things, the divine purpose behind it, and the eternal presence of Christ and His Blessed Mother de Ágreda reveals the inner workings of creation itself, the grand design that not only brought the universe into being, but also set into motion the path of salvation, a path that reaches across time, inviting every soul to partake in the eternal goodness and love of God. Now, we are taken beyond the surface, beyond what we can see or understand with the human eye. It calls us to look deeper, to recognize the true significance of life after death, and to realize that every part of creation has a purpose. De Ágreda's visions offer us a window into the mind God, revealing how all things were created with Christ our Lord in mind, and the eternal role, His most holy Mother. The first revelation is a beautiful one. The divine plan for creation was always, from the very beginning, centered around Christ. Every element of the universe, every star in the sky, every blade of grass, and every moment of time was shaped with Christ in the divine mind. De Ágreda paints a picture of a creator whose design is not arbitrary but intentional. The Lord, in His infinite wisdom, created the world not only to serve His glory, but to set the stage for the coming of Christ. This vision suggests that every part of creation, from the vast galaxies to the smallest organisms, carries within it a trace of divine purpose. Christ, the eternal Word, was not a mere afterthought. He was the central figure in the divine design chosen by the Father to redeem humanity and restore the world to its original state, grace. De Ágreda's mystical experiences remind us that Christ, even before His birth in Bethlehem, was the guiding force behind the creation of the cosmos. Everything, from the beginning, was made with Him in mind. This understanding reshapes how we view life, both in this world and the next. It reminds us that our lives too have a purpose far greater than what we can immediately grasp. Just as the universe was created with Christ in mind, so too is each soul created with eternal significance. Every action, every choice, every prayer is part of this grand design, drawing us closer to the divine love that underpins all of existence. As we reflect on this, De Ágreda also brings to light the special role of the Virgin Mary. She was chosen before all things, even before the foundation of the world. The Most Holy Mother was set apart by the Father, destined to be the Mother of Christ, the bearer of the Word made flesh. In De Ágreda's visions, we see that the Virgin Mary was not merely a passive participant in salvation history. Rather, she was actively involved in God's plan from the very beginning. She is not only the Mother of Christ, but also the Mother of the Church, the guiding light that leads all believers to eternal life. De Ágreda's mystical experiences reveal that the Virgin Mary was not simply a figure who lived in the past, but an active presence in the spiritual realm, interceding for souls and guiding them toward salvation. Her role in salvation is not limited to the past. It is ongoing, extending through time and into eternity. In life after death, as we journey toward the heavenly realm, the Virgin Mary's love and protection are ever present, leading us toward the ultimate reunion with Christ. But de Ágreda's vision does not stop with Christ and his Holy Mother. She delves further into the nature of creation and salvation, showing how all of creation was set in motion to bring about the ultimate purpose, the redemption of humanity. The Lord, in his infinite wisdom, chose his people not as an afterthought, but as part of his divine plan. Humanity's salvation was always at the forefront of God's mind. De Ágreda reveals that through Christ's sacrifice, humanity was chosen to be heirs of eternal life. It was not by our own merit or effort, but by God's grace that we were brought into the divine plan. This divine election is not just for a select few, but for all who open their hearts to God's call. This is the true meaning of salvation, God's unmerited love poured out for all, drawing us to Him to live in His eternal presence. For many, the idea of life after death can be filled with uncertainty and fear. But de Ágreda's visions remind us that death is not an end, but a transformation, a transition into the fullness of our life. Death, in the context of salvation, is not something to dread. It is a passage through which we move closer to the divine presence. The teachings of the mystical city of God show us that life after death is not a vague, unknowable journey. It is a promise of communion with God, of being enveloped in His eternal love, and of living in perfect peace with Him forever. We see that the true purpose of life, both this earthly life and the next, is to know God, to love Him, and to become one with Him in eternal joy. De Ágreda's mystical experiences reveal the path to this eternal union, reminding us that we are not abandoned in this life or the next. Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the entire heavenly host are always present, guiding us, loving us, and ensuring that we never walk this path alone. This realization should bring us peace. The struggles and uncertainties of life are fleeting, but the love of God is eternal. The fears that may grip us in moments of doubt are nothing compared to the assurance that we are part of something far greater. Christ, the Creator of all things, has chosen us. He has called us to live in His light, to walk the path of righteousness, and to rest in His love after this life. Our death is not an end, but a beginning, a transition from this life into the fullness of divine life. The only thing left is the certainty that we were all made with love.